Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and give you that knowledge shortcut. Today, we're tackling something we all think we get: laziness. Usually we see it as, just physical inertia, not wanting to do the dishes maybe, or get off the couch. But the source material we're looking at today, it suggests that's just, well, a symptom.
Exactly. It's
Oh.
really just the tip of the iceberg. We're diving into teachings from the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood, specifically from founder and Grandmaster WaXhira. And this tradition, it's known for blending ancient mystical ideas with more modern psychological frameworks. They completely reframe laziness.
Right, so our mission today is to unpack their main idea that laziness fundamentally is a spiritual condition. And it's rooted, they say, in relying on assumptions. We're exploring how these mental shortcuts, the things we just accept without really questioning, don't just slow down our careers, maybe, but actually paralyze spiritual growth and material progress, too.
That's absolutely right. The core definition they use, well, it defines laziness as a failure to take responsibility for your own spiritual growth, your mental development, and, yes, your physical actions, too. So it's really less about physical movement and much more about consciousness. If you're just unconsciously running on fixed beliefs, you are, kind of by definition, spiritually lazy, according to this view.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more, because why assumptions? Why are they the main cause? It feels a little counterintuitive, doesn't it? Like, if assumptions are mental shortcuts, shouldn't they speed things up? Why are they the ultimate block?
Well, they speed up judgment, maybe, but they seem to halt understanding. The Brotherhood actually calls assumptions laziness. It's like refusing to do the heavy lifting, cognitively speaking, that's needed for, true perception. When you assume, you basically decide you already know the answer.
Okay.
And so you stop seeking, you stop asking questions about the world, you stop looking for deeper truths, and, well, you stop evolving.
So the real laziness isn't avoiding the physical stuff, it's avoiding the mental work. The work needed to maybe dismantle your current view of the world and admit you might be wrong about something.
Precisely, yeah. Grandmaster WaXhira really hammers this point about internal refusal.
Yeah.
The quote is, "Laziness is the refusal to face reality as it is, and instead settling for the comfortable assumptions that shield us from true growth." Assumptions feel comfortable, right?
Right.
Because they get rid of that cognitive dissonance, that mental clash.
And that comfort then becomes this paralyzing trap. So if you assume you can't achieve something, well, the universe kind of confirms it because you just sit still. You've basically created this false sense of certainty that stops you from taking any action.
Exactly. And you can see this paralysis playing out in the material world, too.
Yeah.
Think about that professional example they often use. Assuming your current income or your current job is like the absolute ceiling of your potential.
Right.
You might feel productive,
Yeah.
busy within that job role, but you're being lazy in that spiritual sense because you haven't questioned the belief that set that limit in the first place.
Yeah.
That core assumption is blinding you to completely different paths you haven't even thought to look for.
Okay, so it's like the assumption itself acts as a shield. It protects us from maybe the hard truth that real growth involves some massive, possibly unsettling change.
And it's exactly that need for unsettling change that connects this whole mental block idea to ancient wisdom, which the Brotherhood cites pretty extensively.
Okay, so moving from the practical stuff like work and money towards these spiritual texts they reference, what's the connection? How does this mental block link up with that ancient wisdom?
They draw a direct line between overcoming assumptions and the kind of ancient spiritual imperative to seek, actively seek. They often point to the Gospel of Thomas, saying too specifically is a perfect example of this necessary discomfort. It says, "Let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will be troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will reign over the all."
Wow, that's quite a sequence. Troubled is mandatory before you get to astonishment. But, okay, if the goal is breaking free from stagnation, how do we tell the difference between that productive kind of troubling, the discomfort when an assumption dissolves, and just plain old self-doubt or anxiety? Because that can be paralyzing too, right? Does the source material talk about that line between questioning productively and just sort of paralyzing yourself with uncertainty?
That's a really crucial distinction, yeah. And they do address it. Productive troubling is framed as that temporary shock when you uncover a deep, maybe hidden truth about yourself or reality, the shock of realizing, wow, that assumption was totally false. Paralysis, on the other hand, comes from that spiritual laziness,
Yeah.
the refusal to move past the uncertainty and into action. The fourth material really emphasizes that true seeking involves action, not just sitting around contemplating things.
Action that comes from a new awareness, though, not just being busy for the sake of it.
That's exactly right. And this is backed up by another text they cite, the Book of Remembrance. It talks about internal stagnation, saying that spiritual laziness lets our minds get, well, sluggish, stagnant. The text says something like, "The soul must awaken from slumber, for as long as it sleeps, it is bound by the illusion of separation.
Okay.
Only through active engagement with the self and through conscious actions can it break free."
So pulling these teachings together, laziness isn't just about not moving your body. It's a really profound spiritual block. It's failing to take personal responsibility for our own liberation, essentially, by refusing to engage and question our own internal programming.
Yeah. The only path from that illusion of separation to real freedom is through conscious effort. It demands this sustained, deliberate work of breaking down the assumptions that keep us comfortable, maybe, but also asleep, ignorant of our actual power.
Okay, so if that spiritual laziness is the core issue, what's the path for someone, say an initiate in the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood, to actually shatter these assumptions, these deep-seated beliefs? What are the specific tools they use on that kind of structured journey?
Well, the structure itself is really designed precisely to dismantle the mind's fixed ways of operating. The journey kicks off with the first degree, which is all about deep introspection, really questioning everything. The initiate has to learn to separate what they think they know from what actually is. It's about that initial self-awareness.
And are there specific tools, maybe physical or symbolic things, that help with this mental clearing process, especially for a new initiate?
Yes, the first core working tool they introduce is the ocean. Now, it's symbolic, of course, but it's also functional in how they use it. The ocean represents infinite consciousness, right? The universe has boundless potential that exists way beyond the initiate's current, very limited set of assumptions. So, to connect with that source, the initiate first has to learn to kind of empty their mind of its fixed beliefs, like emptying a cup before you can pour in fresh tea. The ocean acts like a mirror, showing what's possible once that mental clutter is cleared out.
Ah, I see. So the tool becomes immediately functional, not just a ceremony piece. The ocean is like the goal state of consciousness you can reach once you lift that blockade of assumptions.
Precisely, yeah. And then as they move up through the navigator and captain degrees, they're given tools for guidance. These are the compass and the blazing star. Because once you kind of emptied your mind and realized your old assumptions weren't enough, well, you need direction.
Right, makes sense.
So these tools symbolize that internal guidance system that helps you move and explore beyond the comfortable edges of your accepted reality. They constantly push the initiate towards deeper, evolving truths.
You also mentioned rituals playing a role. Why are these ceremonies described as like powerful, practical tools for breaking through assumptions, especially ones imposed by society or family or even ourselves?
Rituals, in this context at least, are seen as highly effective because they intentionally create a kind of cognitive dissonance. They basically force the initiate to perform actions or embody concepts that might run directly counter to their really deeply ingrained assumptions about how reality works. Assumptions often picked up from society. So by deliberately acting outside those routine, comfortable mental patterns, they literally start generating new neural pathways. They fundamentally challenge the underlying assumption that reality is fixed and unchanging.
Okay, so let me see if I get this. If I assume deep down that I'm powerless, then performing a ritual where I actively embody, say, a powerful deity or some universal force, that's a deliberate way to shatter that specific assumption. On a psychological level, it forces a new experience of self-awareness.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. The ritual becomes the active engagement needed to break the slumber that the Book of Remembrance talks about. It forces you beyond just passively accepting the world as it seems on the surface and helps you start seeing the truth hidden underneath those appearances.
Right. So what does all this mean for someone listening right now, someone who wants to move beyond this kind of spiritual laziness, this mental stagnation in their own life, starting today? What are the key takeaways, the concrete steps for taking that immediate active responsibility?
Well, the Brotherhood lays out 4 pretty actionable steps for transcending these kinds of self-imposed limits. And they all center on active spiritual engagement, not just, passively waiting for things to change.
Okay, lay them out for us. Let's start with that daily commitment idea.
Right. First, engage in daily practices. And they stress this isn't really optional if you're serious. Laziness thrives on inaction, right?
Yeah.
So you have to dedicate time daily for things like meditation or maybe focused prayer or even personal ritual if that resonates. The whole point is creating a consistent space where you are actively challenging your assumptions and deliberately working to expand your consciousness.
Yeah.
That sustained effort, they say, is the only real antidote to getting stuck.
Consistent practice. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of work spiritual laziness tries to avoid. Okay, what's the second active step?
Second, question your beliefs. You essentially have to become a relentless investigator of your own mind. Really examine those foundational beliefs you just take for granted. Beliefs about your capabilities, maybe your relationships, how you think reality works, and constantly ask yourself, is this belief actually true? Is it a fact? Or is it just an assumption I've been running on, maybe out of mental inertia, for years? If a belief limits you, it absolutely has to be put under the microscope.
Okay, that connects straight back to the idea that assumptions create that false certainty, which is crippling. If I question the belief, the certainty dissolves and suddenly there's space to move. Okay, and the third step, you mentioned something about internal power earlier.
Yes, and this might be the most critical one. Take radical responsibility. You have to really internalize this idea that you are the creator, or at least the co-creator, of your experience. Stop waiting for external things, circumstances, the government, some other person to change your life for you. Recognize and then use your internal power. And they summarize this perfectly with that really powerful reference. The kingdom of heaven is within you.
Okay, but how does that specific phrase, the kingdom of heaven is within you, how does that connect functionally to shattering laziness? It sounds maybe a bit philosophical. How is it an actionable step?
It becomes actionable because it places responsibility squarely on you.
Absolutely.
If the kingdom is within you, then it implies that every boundary, every limitation, every reality you perceive, it's something you are actively co-creating.
Often
Consciously,
unconsciously.
yeah, through these assumptions we've been talking about.
Oh, right.
So taking responsibility means recognizing you're not just a victim of circumstance. You're actually a shaper of your reality. Spiritual laziness is basically giving up that power, letting it lie dormant. Responsibility is actively reclaiming it.
Wow, okay. That completely flips the locus of control inward. It makes overcoming laziness a really profound act of, like, self-sovereignty. And finally, the fourth step, for getting past this spiritual stagnation.
Fourth is seek truth actively and continuously. You have to commit to staying perpetually open to learning, open to evolving, open to discovering deeper truths. They'd say the highest form of spiritual laziness is the assumption that you already know everything important, that you've figured it all out.
Yeah.
Only by shattering that kind of hubris can you ensure you keep moving, keep growing spiritually. The moment you believe you've arrived, you've actually stopped seeking. You become stagnant again.
This has definitely broadened my definition of laziness, that's for sure. It's really not about choosing to be still physically. It's more about the failure to actively engage your mind, to question the very framework of your reality, and crucially, to take full responsibility for your own internal spiritual growth.
That is the absolute core teaching, yes. To break free from limitation, you have to expand your awareness, question those assumptions relentlessly, and take active, really moment-by-moment responsibility for your spiritual progress.
Which brings us to that final provocative thought we like to leave you with. This philosophy states, quite powerfully, that we have the power to create and shape our lives because the kingdom of heaven is within you. So, if our current reality, including all its limitations, its boundaries, everything you feel stuck by, if that reality is heavily shaped by our unquestioned assumptions, and if those assumptions are, at their root, just a form of mental laziness, then how much of your current perceived limitation have you unknowingly built yourself, maintained, maybe even defended? What boundary, what ceiling could you potentially shatter today just by taking that radical step of questioning? Is this really a fact of the universe, or is it just a comfortable assumption I've been living with? Start seeking. And perhaps discover that discomfort that, as the text suggests, leads to astonishment.